I would just encourage you to remember your worth, and to know that there is help and support out there, and to choose you. You know, we often try to be everything for everyone else and do everything for everyone else and fix it, right? And we neglect ourselves. And sometimes, people are very manipulative. People can be very deceptive. And so it may take a while for, us to recognize that. But once you do, choose you and know that you are worth so much more, and just trust on God's promises over your life.
I do have 2 cents to add. Y'all, abuse is awful, and a lot of women on this line have been suffering abuse for a number of years. And your feelings could be hurt if someone says, I don't like your outfit. So imagine someone saying over and over again that you're not beautiful, that you'll never be anything, or if someone is physically abusing you, you're having to cover the scars, or if you've been in a relationship that's been toxic over some years. All those things add up and really play a factor to make you not feel good. So no, you're not supposed to feel good because someone abused you. But again, what we're saying is God will guide you. He will allow you to remember your value. That's the thing. Is discovering and rediscovering your value and connecting in spaces like this to rediscover who you are as a woman, and that you are God's chosen at the end of the day, as young people say, period.
Yeah, my personal experience with this has taken me down a journey of really seeing how closed off I was in effort to protect myself. I created almost like an institution around myself, like barriers to the most intimate parts of me. And it took a lot of work for me to tear those down in order to be vulnerable for my husband. And I think a lot of it had to do with this fear that I had around losing my sense of self and the things that I thought I had worked really hard at for myself, right? And it ended up becoming this thing all about me. And I realized that God was showing me that it's not all about me, and that the things that he had done through me were, because he had a purpose for me in those seasons. And I was able to carry those out, and now transitioning into a new season where I would create a, covenant with my husband, and we are now one. I had to, and I don't want, and I'm not saying something that's contradicting what Renee is saying, because what Renee said is an important point too, is that not to lose your sense of self, but at the same time, losing your sense of individuality, you know what I mean? And sort of that, like, I am not operating as a single woman anymore. You know what I mean? So I factor in the fact that I am a wife, and that is a responsibility. It's a part of my identity. It's a part of, my role and who I am. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a punishment. It's not, that I'm like entrapped or locked down, or these negative types of connotations that people try to attach to a marriage. Because in going into what Tanisha is saying is, I really feel like the husbands that we have care about our individuality too. You know what I mean? Like, they don't want us to lose our sense of self. They're actually purposed to be there to uplift, to support, to make sure our dreams are fed, to make sure that we have what we need, as long as we're not thinking about just self. You know what I mean? Because that's when I think that it gets to be this, sort of like selfish and independent, operator within a marriage that creates a lot of division and tension and, even competition, you know what I mean? And it's not about that. It's about being able to find, that person who gives you the room to be you and to blossom and to shape and evolve, but also has a place and purpose in that, and contributing to that and supporting that. And it's no longer about me and my own individual accomplishments and goals and dreams. It becomes now his dreams are my dreams. Like, what? You know what I mean? Any gift that I have that I can support his dream is now a gift that we have as a package. Like, okay, because we're winning together. You know what I mean? It's not like an individual kind of thing. And so just to wrap it up, that fear, you know, it reminds me of what Ashley was saying before about sitting in that feeling and really exploring, what am I afraid of? Am I afraid of losing? You know, what am I afraid of losing? And, you know, Lord, humble me so that I can make room for somebody else, so that I'm not thinking it's the Keisha show when I'm actually married to someone and it's the Nelson show. You know what I mean?
I think there's two things for me that stand out just from conversations with other women who are mothers. And the first would be thinking about the words balance and priority, and just in terms of how it's not always going to be the case that everything completely levels out. There are going to be times where maybe something, whether it's your family or an aspect of your career or some other factor that may take over at the present time, but that doesn't make you, kind of going back to some of the things we talked about before, you know, it doesn't minimize your role as a wife, a mother, a professional, or any of those. You know, balance is important, but it's not always the case that that balance means that things are going to level out. There are times when one thing might kind of take precedence over the other. And that could be for a few days, it could be just for a particular day, but it could be longer periods of time. Obviously, you know, not to the point where you're neglecting your family, but just being able to think about the shift in priorities. And I think fitting into that sometimes is this aspect that, you know, as women and sometimes as mothers, we have to juggle so many things. But it's not always the case that maybe we need to juggle those things. Maybe there are some things that actually need to fall. So that was one thing that's been shared with me, I think, in a couple of different ways. And the other is just remembering that from a biblical and a faith standpoint, that as a mom, as a parent, you are a disciple of your child, a discipler of your child. And just remembering that in most cases, you know, you and you know, your spouse, your partner are going to be the first people that your children learn about God from, and just not taking that lightly. Obviously, recognizing God's grace in that and knowing that you're not going to be able to convey everything perfectly. You always be that perfect example, but just trying to be mindful of the fact that your children see you and should be able to hopefully see God's light through you that way.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? First off, I would just like to thank Ms. Tasha Wilson for inviting me to Royalty Refined Conference. It was amazing. I thoroughly enjoyed the panelists, from marriage, for children. The 3 points was just amazing, and I can't wait for next year. It was a lot of nuggets, a lot of nuggets, especially on mental health. Everything starts in the mind. And so I really thank Tasha for putting on this conference, and basically all the panelists for sharing their story, for sharing their testimonies. Thank you. Have a blessed one. Bye-bye.
I just wanted to again say that the Royalty Refined New Conference 2020 Radically Royal was amazing, and if you missed out, I hope that you are able to join us for next year's conference.